on from that game, we also have a game which is, at least on paper, a bit of a humdinger.
Truly.
We have Grand Slam champions Wales up against All Black conquering Argentina. This is going on in the Principality Stadium on Saturday at 1 p.m. local time, so an early kickoff.
That's right.
Matt Carley taking the game with Luke Pearce and Carl Dixon assistant referees, and Claire Hodnett, who's taken her second ever test game from the TMO after Ireland-Japan last week, so an all English refereeing team.
Yeah.
And this is actually this is a very, very interesting game on paper between the thing that jumps out at me is the best defense in the world last year, near enough, against one of the best offenses in the world in the Six Nations this year, when Wales just lit it up and scored tries from everywhere. And I just think from a matchup point of view, I'm very, very intrigued to see how that goes. Yeah,
I'm absolutely excited to see how that goes. It's a game that on paper is exciting all throughout the years, and yet you haven't seen that much of them. It's a weird history. I was looking up. The first match between the two of them took place in '68. But they played a 2-match series as part of a Wales tour. However, only Argentina awarded full caps for that one. Wales didn't. Argentina won the first game 9-5, and the second was drawn 9-all in that one. And then they met again in Cardiff in '76, which Wales won 2019. But that wasn't capped either. Their first capped game happened in 1991 in the pool stage of the World Cup, and Wales won that 16-7. And since then they've only met 18 times.
Yeah,
which is quite a I would have thought more. I would have really thought they'd have met more often. Wales currently hold the upper hand with 13 wins to Argentina's 5.
What we would give for such a record against the Pumas.
I know, right? Yeah, another really good fixture on paper, but it's just one that we don't quite see as often. One moment that I do remember is the '99 World Cup, one of the most famous rugby brawls of all time, just before we shifted to professionalism. It started on the pitch, ended in the dugout. There were eye gouges, blood everywhere. It was just an absolute riot on the pitch between these two.
I don't expect that.
No, I don't expect it on this occasion. Their last meeting more recently was in 2018. Wales won a 2-match series. You may remember it, down in Argentina. Their first test 23-10 and the second one 30-12. That was a different time though, 2018. It's a while ago.
It was.
Very different Argentina team, very different
That was
Wales
an Argentina team that was kind of fading a little, I think,
true.
Towards the tail end of that. It was a weird time. They had the 2015 World Cup, they were great, but just as they were building for that 2019 World Cup, they tapered off a little.
It's true.
And they still haven't really truly reinvented themselves from attack. Well, they did reinvent themselves last year, but they haven't found themselves on attack that much since then. We do have the two squads.
We do,
mercifully, which is great to see. Wales obviously depleted without their Lions, but they have a decent team on paper. They've got Jonathan Davis, I believe, captaining.
Yeah.
But to start with the pack, they've got Nicky Smith, Elliot Dee, Dylan Lewis, Ben Carter, who was man of the match last week, Will Rowlands, who grabbed a try, Ross Moriarty, James Botham, who played very well, Wainwright then at 8. And then in the back line, Hardy and Sheedy should drive that nice pace. They've got Davis and Halaholo, which is a lovely centre partnership on paper, with Nick Tompkins on the bench to come in as well. And then they've got Owen Lane, Jonah Holmes, who bagged some meat last week, and they've gone with Hallamamos at 15 over the potential Nick Tompkins option. Yeah. But it's a lovely team. They're obviously shorn of many of their men.
It's true. It kind of seems to me they've balanced their cap dispersion, because it is a young team, but with some crucial bits of experience throughout. You have obviously the most experience is Jay Davis by quite a distance. He has 89 test caps. And then the next closest is Moriarty with 46 at 6. Himself and Wainwright in the back row, 46 and 30 caps. And then in the front row is where they have most of them. It's Smith with 40, D with 38, and Lewis 29.
Most of them off the bench though.
Most of them off the bench, and then the only other one is I think Amos with 23 in the back line. But then beyond that, you're looking at single figures. Sheedy 10 caps so far, one of the relative experienced of all those young charges. Hardy Sheedy, a very exciting young halfback combination, 15 caps between them.
Yeah, no, it's a team that's made to move the ball. It's a team that's leaning into what they were good at.
Yeah.
That's why I like Halaholo out there. I like having the fast guys out there. They've gone for Hallamamos at 15 as a winger, just to put pace in the team. Yeah. To keep the tempo going and keep everything high.
What they suspect might be a jet lagged and raggedy Argentina side around Principality Stadium all day.
I mean, you were talking about experience. You contrast that with what the Pumas got going. On paper, this could be a big away win. You've got Tata Chaparro, Montoya and Gomez Cadea
Very experienced.
in the front row. That is a monstrous scrummaging unit up against a Welsh trio who don't have a faultless record as far as their scrummaging is concerned. Guido Petty and Marcus Kramer is gritty and mean in the lock partnership.
Favoured over the slightly more dodge Lavanini Kramer combo that we saw in Romania.
They've got Matera, Facundo Issa, Rodrigo Bruni, who bagged a try last week.
That's an awesome back row.
Really, really good.
Yeah.
Then they've got Cabelli and Sanchez in the form of his life last year. De La Fuente and Moroni in the centres, stalwarts galore, and then Carreras, Cordero and Juan Cruz Malia making up the back three.
Brand new back three, actually. Last week, Boffelli and Imov started in Romania last week, and obviously have taken shouldered some of the blame for what happened down there because they are out of the 23.
Imov has been only just coming back from injury, hasn't he? So he's still all class in my book. But I mean, like, if it wasn't for the fact that we've seen this Pumas before, like they had that dodgy game against Romania, where sometimes when they're touring Europe and they haven't been settled together in camp, they just look a shadow of themselves.
It's true.
And it does happen.
Guys like Kramer looking bang average against
dropping
Romania,
balls and not winning
whereas
contacts.
You see him against the All Blacks, roll back the clock, like, what is it?
A few months, 6 months, 8 months
ago, I guess, and he was just dominating the All Black pack, and you're like, whoa, is that the same guy? But sure, we know this. We've seen it a lot. Ireland play Argentina a lot, and we get a lot of false confidence from our November beatings of Argentina, where it's like, oh, Argentina, we're better than Argentina, right? And it's like,
we always beat them until it matters.
The World Cup, when it matters, you know. Like,
but yeah, like that. This is part of the reason why I would give Wales the edge, is just because Argentina looked dialed out last week. But on paper, I think you have to say that Argentina have their first choice players, and they beat the All Blacks last year. They should be here to give Wales a right good go.
Yeah.
Looking at the game just from the point of view of each team, we'll start obviously with Wales.
Yeah.
Like, it for me, like we talked galore about them in the Six Nations, but it was all about that sort of red zone efficiency, finding tries, and it doesn't matter.
Spending 2 minutes in the red zone in the first 2 games and grabbing try after try after try.
They've picked a team to do that. They still have Hardy, who was in his one game he played arguably their best scrummy at the Six Nations, with Sheedy, who started most of those games, and Halaholo and Davis. They like, it's a team built to move the ball, and it doesn't matter what the game looks like on paper if Wales can get on top of that Argentina defence, find the necessary offloads, stretch the field, and punish them for being narrow, and like nobody did to Argentina.
It's true.
Like, I started last year loving Argentina, but by the end of it I kind of hated them, and I wanted someone to get after them.
You weren't alone in that.
And yeah, well, indeed there was but no, that's putting political reasons aside. But I just, like, they were so defensive and they did nothing on offense, and everyone was just a bit clunky last year. It was one of the worst years for offensive rugby you'd ever see. But nobody quite managed to put together the game to get outside them and really put a score on them and end that sort of defensive dominance that they were bringing. Perhaps Wales is the team, especially if they're a little dialed out, but they've brought lovely passers of a ball. They need to get to the extremities and get outside that narrow tigerish blitz with depth, and whether it's a crossfield kick or whatever it is, just get outside that edge defence and then punish them, find tries like only Wales can.
Like only Wales can. Well, they scored 68, albeit against a slightly porous Canadian team last week. But, quite porous. But the tempo is just the key to their approach, and they picked, as you say, the halfbacks to do it. They will try and move them around. It's going to be a big job for guys like Carter Rowlands in the second row. I know Carter was man of the match on debut. We were touting him, great showing. Rowlands has been earned his place through really good form over the last couple of years with Wasps, and he is a big unit. They will be far busier this week. Even a dialed out Argentina are physical in the tight and will try and hit you. It's a big job for the
They got to get outside them. They got to link up. You got to have those little tip-on passes. James Botham's got to be involved in that department.
Absolutely.
They've got to keep the pace of the game high and get the offload game going.
This is it. Well, they need to make it their kind of game. Like their back row. It's quite a young back row, but they will have to be busy and hustling and just keeping that tempo high all game, because I think they are at a deficit as far as just size and physicality and heft to those monstrous Argentinians. But they have the advantage as far as speed and probably fitness and just kind of urgency, which is something that you very often see is lacking from Argentinian touring teams. So making it a high tempo, high octane affair, even a high scoring shootout, will favour Wales. If they get dragged into a kind of a laboured game, a more physical arm wrestle, then this young Welsh side they will be fine. That's not where they want to be in those trenches. They want to grab a couple of clean tries early and just get some daylight and cruise from there, and that's what they've done very well.
It is, and like the red zone efficiency has to continue, but they do have to be mindful of some of these Argentine guys, in particular the jackal of Matera. Like they do need someone to target him.
It could be both of them. It could, like, whoever it is will need to mind the pill, because they, like, it's lovely the way they move the ball. It's lovely the way they clear rucks in an instant. Ideally, like, no second rucks gone. But you have to accept the fact that there might be a Matera there once or twice, and you need to get him out of there, because it'll, like, if it starts yielding penalties, if the breakdown gets a little loose, and those like it's not just Matera. Like Bruni will get over the ball, Issa will get over the ball, Kramer will get over the ball, Petty will steal the ball on you, Montoya, the whole pack will take a jackal if it lands at their feet, and sometimes Wales can get a little bit like
you got to keep it to the back line, you got to attack the back line.
You know, rook avoidance strategy, if at all possible, you can pop it up to the half back and keep it going. Do so.
And the other question is about Sheedy's leadership as well. Like, he's been playing nothing but flowy footy for Bristol and Wales. If Argentina get in their face, if that defence is styling them, does he have the capacity to take charge, to change the game, to pin them back,
to go toe to toe with a guy like Sanchez in a kicking game? You know,
Well,
I would give Sanchez the edge in an out and out territory battle. So it depends what Argentina we see, obviously, but that is a question that remains unanswered about Sheedy. He's a lovely player to watch in flow, but it's when the tempo is disrupted, can he dig them out?
And as much as we tout Wales, that the Pumas could be the team to put that pressure on them. You know, maybe it's a case where they knock cobwebs off against Romania.
Maybe so.
They did still beat the All Blacks last year.
That's it. You can't write away that for ignominiously tight win over Romania aside. They did beat the All Blacks last year, like less than 12 months ago. So it's like,
more than can be said for Wales. You know, they haven't beaten the All Blacks in a long old while, and they did it with defence. I mean, their silky attacking shape is something that they will need to find again.
They do, and they might not find it this week. They grabbed a couple of nice tries against Romania that were encouraging, and Cordero's back in the mix for them, and like, they have such stocks in those backline. Like, they dropped Imov and Buffelli for this week. Just drop them, you know, out of the squad because they were annoying them, and then they bring in guys who are really, really good in their stead. So it makes very little sense that they aren't as expansive, or that they weren't as expansive. I think you're right to say that the game has moved on in even those 8 months or 6 months since that time. You can't really get away with being that one-dimensional side. Wales are more attacking oriented. They will obviously have to lean on their defence. You can't cast it aside. You don't need to either be one thing or the other.
No, they have to.
But keeping that defence, trying to repel that awesome, the most clinical, most effective offence in the Six Nations this year, which was Wales, trying to match that with the most brutal defence in the Southern Hemisphere in the Tri-Nations last year, which was the Pumas. It's a wonderfully colourful matchup. Can Argentina manage to repel them or even contain them to a few scores and then find some of their own, which they will need to work? That is a big work on for them, just from last year and even from the World Cup as well. Like, they haven't been their silky selves. They haven't really found under Ledesma. They haven't found what their attacking tempo is. They don't quite know what speed they want to play at, and they just find it very difficult to unpick defences. They've
been about set piece and kicking game and defence, and I think they could ride that wave pretty far if it goes their way. If they can get on top of the Welsh, if they can get out of the line and be disciplined but also effective in terms of just shutting down that what is going to be somewhat disjointed. You know, they don't have the amount of players they don't have now with Navidi gone as well, and Beard is colossal, and they don't really have the distribution option from lock as much as they would have with a Beard in there or Alan Jones in there. So there is a chance if they can get out of the line as they did against the All Blacks to just chop, tackle, disrupt, jackal, get on top of them. There is a very good chance that they can get on top in the scrum with that front row they picked. Their maul could be good. All of these things that they did well over the last 12 months, married with the kicking game from Cabelli and Sanchez, could just pin Wales back. Wales weren't the cleanest team at exiting in the Six Nations, so they could plot their way around the pitch and play a very disruptive physical game. But without just that little top 2 inches on offence, I think they will ultimately fall foul to just that one Welsh chance that does end up in a try if they can't press home the advantage that they might well build for themselves with a class forward pack and half back pairing.
On paper they look very, very good. That being said, what do you expect to see from them?
Indeed. They'll have to bring the same kind of ferocity that they brought last autumn. It'll have to be the same energy. Like, there were such... They had that crowd. They had the jumping up and down. They were beating their chests after every play. It was emotional.
They had a base camp.
Yeah, exactly.
They were in Australia for 4 weeks before playing a game.
It's true, yeah. That's
opposed
what
to being in Romania one week and Wales the next, and then flopping around and all this. Like they never perform as well when they're jumping around, and they never perform as well in summer or
so I guess you're saying Wales.
I'm leaning towards a Wales win, so I am. A home win for the Six Nations champs is what I think, and a slightly underwhelming Argentinian showing despite the calibre of the players that they have. Do you know what it reminds me? It reminds me of whenever I read the Montpellier team sheet the week of Leinster v Montpellier, and I start thinking, oh my god, these guys are
Bismarck,
scary.
Duplessis,
Bismarck, look at it, surfing. Oh my god, these guys are class. And then you look at them on the pitch scoring 3 and shipping 50, and you're like, wait a minute, what? And they all look fat and disinterested, and it's just like, okay. I expect
Shane's long-standing hatred of Montpellier goes on, and he'll get that cheap shot in every podcast.
time. It's until Leinster stop drawing them.
Until Montpellier just stop. Didn't they win the Challenge Cup this year? Get off their backs. No. They're champions.
They are champions this year. No, to be fair, they were better this year. To be fair, that is undoubtedly true.
Get off their backs.
No, but they remind me of that kind of team where, like, on paper, I'm reading the Argentinian team, I'm like, that's a better team than the Wales team. It's just on paper, it's better.
But is it better if it doesn't score as many tries? No. That's the philosophical question. Are you truly better if you dominate every area and don't score the tries? This is why everyone thought Wales were worse than the teams they were beating.
Yes.
It's because they were losing certain areas and
is a Northern
tries.
Hemisphere narrative that is wrong-headed. Yeah. It's the same. You can see it in the football where they're talking about, like, the team in possession is like, oh, they're dominating the game. They have like 60% possession. It's like they haven't scored. Yeah. They're playing terribly. They have no pace. They're not doing anything. Exactly. It's like that's not dangerous. It's not anything at all. Scores count. The rest is all gibberish. Like Ireland, the amount we talk about that in Ireland is like, oh, we played a good pressure game, we had 60% possession, 60% territory, we scored 16 points.
Wales score points, and for that reason you would give them the edge. I suppose I give them the edge as well, but I do think that if Argentina show up, they could win.
I agree with that.
If they show up, they could win. So
if they show up at all, I think they should win, because I think they're on paper a more experienced, better side.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think that that's what I'm expecting to happen.
Well, I think I probably agree with you, but I definitely accept the possibility of a Pumas win here, and it'll definitely be an interesting watch. I'm looking forward to seeing it Saturday at 1 p.m.
1 p.m. Saturday, a nice curtain raiser for the weekend's action anyway, and it's just two exciting teams and a game, as we said, that we don't see as often as we might. Yeah. So enjoy it.
Looking forward to that one.
Thank you very much for watching that video. If you're new here, please do like and subscribe and ring the bell so you get notified when we upload again. But mainly, please drop a comment down below. We enjoy hearing your thoughts on it. Thanks.